My grandfather bought this land back in 1955. Rolling Texas hills, oak trees, and a dam he built to protect our neighbors when drought came. For decades, it was more than property. It was family. But when I came back to see it, everything had changed. The back 40 acres, gone. Replaced by concrete trucks, survey flags, and 35 brand new homes built by an HOA that swore the land was theirs. They didn't just steal dirt, they stole history. And then came the final blow. They diverted the creek, choking the dam my pops built, draining every drop like it meant nothing. That's when I realized this wasn't just a fight for land, it was a fight for legacy, and they had no idea what was coming next. My grandfather, Pops to everyone who knew him, bought this land in 1955, back when Austin was just a sleepy Texas town. No tech towers, no fancy suburbs, just wide open skies and cattle on green pastures. Pops believed in hard work, respect for the land, and neighbors helping neighbors. In 1978, he built a small dam on our property, not for money, but for survival. It collected rainwater for our cattle and provided relief to folks downstream during dry spells. That dam was his pride, and over the years, it became part of our family story. Pops always said, "Someday this land will be worth more than oil." Back then, it was just hills where kids played and cattle grazed. But as decades passed, Austin changed. Tech companies moved in. Farmland turned into subdivisions overnight. And when Pops passed, the land went into a trust under my sister, Sarah. She meant well, but she lived in California, far from Texas law, and even farther from how ruthless HOAs can be. That's where Maggie Thornwell came in, the queen bee of Willowbrook Estates, the kind of woman who smiles while sharpening her knife. HOA president, married to a city councilman, white BMW in the driveway, cigarette smoke clinging to her expensive perfume. Maggie had one mission: expand her perfect suburban kingdom. And my family's land was her golden ticket. Sarah never noticed the property taxes creeping higher or the zoning paperwork sliding through city council. But Maggie did. She saw opportunity, and she took it. What started as a quiet land trust turned into a battleground. I didn't know it yet, but the back 40 acres Pops loved so much were already in her crosshairs, and she was ready to do whatever it took to claim them. The day I drove back to Pop's land, the gravel road felt the same under my tires. The same oak tree I carved my initials into still stood tall. I expected peace. Instead, I found chaos. Survey stakes dotted the fields like battle flags. Concrete trucks idled in the heat. Crews in hard hats moved like ants, pouring foundations where cattle used to roam. My land, our family's land, was disappearing right before my eyes. I flagged, down the foreman, demanding answers. He didn't flinch. "This is Willowbrook Estates property now," he said, as if my name, my history, didn't matter. "We've got permits." I called the county, then the police. Officer Martinez showed up, shifting uncomfortably as he explained what I never saw coming. The HOA had filed an adverse possession claim. Texas law says if someone can prove they've maintained and improved unused land for a certain time, they can claim ownership. That law was meant to prevent land from being abandoned, but Maggie had turned it into a weapon. While I was away thinking everything was safe, Maggie had crews mowing, clearing brush, even staging improvements, all documented, all logged. And with my sister trusting a management company to handle everything, nobody noticed a thing, but Maggie didn't stop at paperwork. She diverted the creek that fed Pops's dam. 1 week later, the water was down a foot. Another week, 2 feet. The grass dried out. The cattle tanked. 45 years of water management, gone in days. Pops built that dam not just for us, but for neighbors who counted on that water during drought. Maggie didn't care. To her, it was just an obstacle. I stood there one evening watching bulldozers carve up my family's history, while HOA volunteers walked the edge of the property, like it was their private park. Maggie's voice echoed in my head. the line she dropped with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. "Your family abandoned this land, honey. We're just putting it to good use for the community." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about taxes or paperwork. It wasn't about progress or community development. It was a hostile takeover, wrapped in HOA bylaws and fake politeness. And as Pops used to say, if someone wants a fight, you make sure they regret it. I made a decision that night. They thought I was just some absent landowner they could steamroll. They were wrong. This wasn't just land. This was blood, history, and promise. And if Maggie wanted a war, she was about to get one. The lawyer I hired told me it would take $85,000 just to challenge the zoning change. $85,000 to fight for land that had been in my family for nearly 70 years. He acted like I should just give up, sign the papers, and move on. That night, I sat in my truck under the Texas stars, staring at the land Maggie was carving up. Pops always said, "The answers are in the details." So I did what he taught me. I went digging. I spent days combing through dusty county records, every page like a minefield of legal traps. And then buried in old files, I struck gold, the original 1978 dam permits. Pops hadn't just built a water hole. He built it under federal supervision, working directly with the Army Corps of Engineers for flood control and watershed protection. That changed everything. You see, when the federal government is involved, it creates federal jurisdiction, something no HOA and no city council can override. Maggie's shiny permits, her zoning changes, worthless against federal authority. But the real bombshell came next. While digging through those archives, I found something even older, a 1923 water rights deed. My great-grandfather had purchased senior water rights to the entire Willow Creek watershed. These weren't just any rights, they were pre-municipal, predating the city itself. In Texas, senior water rights trump everything. They're untouchable. And Maggie? She didn't just trespass on my land, she stole my water. Diverting that creek was a direct violation of rights older than every single one of her HOA rules combined. My hands shook as I held those papers, adrenaline pounding in my veins. This wasn't a property dispute anymore, it was a federal and state water rights case. Maggie had turned this into a legal war she couldn't win. I walked out of that courthouse with copies in my truck and a fire in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry. I was ready to take back everything they tried to steal. And I knew exactly where to start, with the water that kept Pops's promise alive. The sun beat down on the land as I walked toward Pops's dam. The water level had dropped dangerously low thanks to Maggie's little creek diversion, but not for long. With my permits in one hand and a crowbar in the other, I cranked open the old steel gate Pops welded himself back in '78. The sound hit me first, a deep, roaring surge as years of captured rainwater burst free. It thundered down the channel, racing toward the construction site like a freight train. The crews scattered, shouting, boots slipping in the mud as the ground turned to a rushing torrent. Slabs of concrete cracked, forms collapsed, and Maggie's dream of her perfect neighborhood washed away before it ever broke ground. By sundown, the back 40 was no longer a construction zone. It was a swamp. The dam was still standing strong because Pops built it right. But Maggie's foundations? Gone. Every penny she spent drowned in the very water she tried to steal. The county sheriff came knocking the next morning. But when I showed him the permits and the 1923 water rights deed, his jaw tightened. He knew what I knew. Maggie was finished. Federal jurisdiction, senior water rights, game over. Word spread fast. The HOA emergency meeting turned into a blame game. Maggie's crocodile tears didn't save her this time. Turns out, threatening a veteran on his own land while breaking state water laws doesn't play well on the evening news, especially when the headline reads, HOA President Under, Investigation for Illegal Land Grab. Weeks later, I stood by that dam watching the water sparkle under the Texas sun. the same way Pops must have nearly 50 years ago. I thought about what this fight cost me, not in money, but in peace. And I wondered how many others don't get the chance to fight back. Because here's the truth. Land isn't just dirt and grass. It's history, it's family, it's freedom. And if you don't defend it, someone like Maggie will take it and smile while they do. So tell me, what would you do if everything your family built was stolen while you were gone? Would you fight, or would you let it flow?